Hi again. Thank you for choosing In My Shoes. I'm Hilda Kathy Broady, your host. Remember, get your pen and your paper because we don't have any commercials and we are taking a different approach to service in the world. I have someone today that y'all have been begging for, someone who can actually help you with your business plans. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Victoria Yampolsky.
I'm the founder and president of the Startup Station.
She's the founder and president of the Startup Station. And welcome. And she has on her flip-flop already because she has to be in my shoes. So, tell me, what brings you to In My Shoes?
Well, Hilda, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you very much for having me over. And the reason why I'm here is because I'd like to tell all the audiences of BrooksNet about what I'm doing with the Startup Station. Startup Station is a consultancy for early-stage startups and small businesses that I started 5 years ago, where I help businesses with all aspects of their monetization strategy, meaning that I help them figure out how they can make money. To support my consultancy, 2 years ago, I've started a school because I realized that there was a big gap in the expertise in an ecosystem in New York in terms of how to do valuation for startups, how much their companies were worth, how to build financial projections for businesses that did not yet have revenues. And started teaching different classes to address that. I have now expanded my curriculum, and now I have launched a formal school that consists of 5 classes that I'm teaching all around Manhattan.
Oh, so you're traveling around. It's not online also?
It's going to be online probably in a few months, and then I'm going to launch it nationally. But for now, I'm teaching in-person workshops that range anywhere from 20 to 40 people.
Wow, and how frequently do you offer the classes?
Each class is currently offered once a month, and so I teach them monthly.
Is it like a continuation? I have to take class 1 and then class 2 and 3, 4. Is it consecutive or?
Some classes are consecutive, they're connected by topic. For example, I'm teaching a class on financial modeling where I'm explaining the basics of the income statement and a balance sheet and the different valuation models for pre-revenue startups. And then the second class would be, well, now that you've learned some theory, how do you apply this into practice? How do you actually model various business models for software startups or for product startups where there's a different component that needs to be modeled, which is the revenue, which is the inventory component, the supply chain component. Because when you have a product startup, you need to figure out how to get that product from point A to point B, which is something that is not present for technology startups where, you just sold over internet or it's sold via download or whatever it is, or a license, etc. So those 2 classes come as a next class after the theoretical class, and then for those people who have never done any modeling in Excel, I'm also teaching a class on financial modeling Excel basics, which can come in between those classes, but if people have modeled in Excel, they don't need to take it. And the final class is a standalone where I'm teaching different financing vehicles. There are 3 ways in which every startup can get financed. Equity, convertible debt, which is debt that can get converted into equity upon several different triggers.
Okay, so you have to explain what equity is first because...
Oh, equity is, when somebody gives you money and they take a piece of your company for being so kind to you, that means that they have equity. Right? So if the company goes bankrupt, they're the last ones who get paid. If you go to the bank and the bank gives you a loan, those people get paid first, and those people who just give you the money because they believe in you, because they believe in your business plan, because they believe that you can execute your business plan and succeed, they give you money in the form of equity.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the most common ways of how startups get financed. But then people started getting a little smart, and they decided they don't like equity because they can't really agree with the founders of what the company is worth. Of course, all the investors wanted to value the company as low as possible, and all the founders wanted to value their company as high as possible. And when there's nothing, when there's no yet validation of a concept, when they haven't gone to market, when there are customers, it's very difficult to agree what the correct value of a company is. And so they came up with 2 other vehicles, which are now also used in financing startups. One of them is called convertible debt, which is, in this case, an investor loans you money like a bank, but they're not a bank, so they're not going to require as many financial requirements to be satisfied, in terms of, past financial performance, or the amount of cash on the balance sheet or anything like that. And so that debt, however, is not your usual debt, because that debt can get converted into equity upon several triggers. For example, when the company goes through another round of financing, or when the company gets acquired by another company, or when it goes public. And so this debt is called a hybrid instrument, right? Because it's a
Hybrid?
hybrid, because it's a mix of the debt and equity components. And so now people started using it, and I personally think that it's not a good instrument to use because it's a complex instrument. It wasn't invented for that purpose. It was invented for use of companies that do make money as a way of them to get cheaper debt. And then all the venture capitalists say, well, why don't we use this very sophisticated vehicle and try to fool founders, put all these conditions in there that people who are not familiar with finance will not understand. And then in the end, somebody who is may end up with the term sheet, which means, what are the terms of how some certain vehicle is structured that are not advantageous to the founder and may make it difficult for the founder to raise money in the future.
Wow.
And then there is a third one.
I'm trying to get a whoa.
And the third one is called SAFE. That's something that's been invented by Y Combinator. Y Combinator is one of the most famous accelerators in the US and in the world. It's located on the West Coast, and they have the highest number of successful exits of all the accelerators. So in case you don't know what an accelerator is, it's like a school for startups. So if you don't know anything, you've got an idea, maybe you've got a prototype, like your product in the initial stages, you can go to an accelerator and they can teach you all the things that you don't know about marketing, sales, and business development, and maybe finance. Finance is something that even the accelerators don't teach, even though I think it's absolutely necessary for anybody who wants to run a business to know a level finance. But maybe, some accelerators do. The point is that Y Combinator came up with a simplified version of convertible debt because they saw all the trouble with that vehicle, and they called this vehicle SAFE. So it's not really supposed to be safe. It just they use this acronym for a false sense of security, but it stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity. And what it is that basically the way that the vehicle works is somebody gives you money, but they don't decide how much, what the stake somebody will get for that amount of money. That is decided later when the next financing event takes place, or when the acquisition takes place, or when the company goes public, because the idea is that at that state, it will be more clear what the company is worth. And so this solves a lot of the problems that the equity investors are facing with founders when they can't agree on the valuation, and it doesn't have a debt component that the convertible debt has, and so it's structured in a much simpler way. It also reduces legal fees. So I personally like this vehicle a lot, and equity, but not convertible debt.
Safe down there.
Yes, if anybody wants to finance their startup, they should either do it via equity or SAFE.
Have you ever had a company that, okay, I have my EIN number, I'm established as a company, but I lose money every year. I never got over
to profitability.
Right. You still have to pay taxes even though you don't.
Well, if you have a negative income, you probably, this is a question for the accountant, which I'm not. However, I think that you don't have to pay taxes if you have a negative income. If you are a business if you are a sole proprietor, you still have to pay the self-employment tax. So you have to pay some minimal number of taxes. But if you're not making money, then you're not.
Because a lot of people are afraid to even think about starting up because they say, well, what happens? Taxes scare people. What happens if it doesn't work out the first time? Am I going to be liable, or can I say, okay, that didn't work and I can move on and start something else? But you're in business to make sure that the first time it works.
That is correct, but I also think that you can't be afraid of failure if you want to be an entrepreneur, because that's the only way how you can learn. And there are very few entrepreneurs that were able to succeed from the first try. I have certainly had my fair share of failures before I got to the state where I know what I'm doing. And they made me stronger, and they made me learn from my mistakes, and now I know what I have to watch out for, and I can also teach other people what to watch out for. So to answer your question, before anybody should think about starting a business, they should think why they're starting it. So they should do some preliminary steps to evaluate the feasibility of their business. So number one is they should do market research, which means that they should look at the industry that they're trying to enter. If they're already working in this industry, they may know it very well. That may be why they want to start a business in this industry. They should still see where the industry is going, what the latest trends are, what the technological developments are. They should also really research competition. This is called competitive analysis. You can't imagine how much you can learn from looking at what other people are doing and where they have been successful, and most importantly, where they have failed. And this is something that a lot of small businesses and a lot of inexperienced entrepreneurs do not do. They get very excited by their idea and they rush to implement it. And this is a mistake, because before you rush to implement something, you should first see what else is in the market and make sure that what you're doing is really different from what else is in the market. And the other thing, you should make sure that somebody will actually need it, that there is demand for whatever you're creating. So the first step when you have an idea is not to create, whether it's a mobile app or whether it's a new website or whether it's a new clothing line or whether it's a new grocery store. The first step is to figure out if you, let's say, want to open a gas station, whether the neighborhood where you're trying to open it actually needs another gas station. Maybe there are a few other ones within a few blocks, and then you're not going to have enough customers to satisfy the demand. And the same logic can be applied to absolutely every business. And so that's what somebody should do. And then once they figure out what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're going to go to market, the next step is to evaluate their business from the financial point of view to make sure that they don't end up in the red as they start executing their strategy. And if they are supposed to end up in the red because it may take time to create the product from scratch, or it may take time to create a mobile app from scratch, that they understand how much investment they need to make before they get to profitability, which will help them properly plan for their startup or small business taking.
So it usually takes like 2 to 3 years to really get, it actually depends on what your business is about.
Right. If you're a service business, then it just depends how quickly you can get customers. I would say that you should be able to get customers within a few months, or you shouldn't be in business. And normally people, when they start going on their own, they start getting customers while they still have their full-time jobs, so that they don't end up, they basically forego this first initial period when they're trying to gain customers for themselves. So for service businesses, the startup period is a lot shorter. For, let's say, technology startups, depending on how complex their product is, it can be anywhere from 3 months if it's a simple mobile app to 2-3 years that we're talking about a platform that has many services, and especially if it has an AI component. Any company, AI stands for artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is now being incorporated in practically every single technology startup. And so to compete, you almost have to incorporate it as well. But for the AI to work, you need to teach it, right? You need to teach it through the algorithm and give it a lot of information so that it begins to perform and begins giving results that can replace whatever else you're trying to replace it with. And so that takes time. And then there could be certain other complexities. For the physical product, it depends whether it requires any regulatory approvals. If we're talking about any medical device or a new drug, obviously it has to go through FDA approvals. That by itself takes 3 years. If we're talking about a physical product, to design, let's say, a clothing line, it may take, anywhere from, depending how fast you work, let's say 3 to 6 months, because there are usually 2 collections, fall and spring, for all the fashion houses. And so that's how fashion designers usually work. If we're talking about a physical product, then you first create a simple prototype, and then you have to create an industrial prototype. So that probably can be done up to a year. So it really depends what you're doing, and it depends on how much expertise you have and how much help you have, because if you're working by yourself at nights and weekends, that's going to take you longer than if you hire people and if you have some capital to invest and have somebody to help you to get your company off the ground.
So you help them even with their business outline? Like, I've gone to the MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency's website, and they have a checklist to see if you're ready to think about starting your own business. And I've always stopped at the checklist. So
That was before you met me. Now
exactly. I'm not ready yet. I kept saying I'm not ready yet. It's not time yet, because most of the people I ask, well, where do I find funding? I tell them to go to grants.gov, because that's what I know.
right?
But-
Grants
but-
is one option.
But I heard that if a government grant is involved, then they're regulating, they're dictating how your business is run.
Well, you have to qualify for a government grant. I think government grants are a great way to get money because they don't take any piece of your company. They're just giving you money because they like what you're doing for whatever reasons, whether it has a nonprofit component or if it's a green energy or if in some other field that they like to support. So that's a great way to get money. It's very difficult to get those grants because anything that has a great deal has a lot of competition, a lot of people trying to get it. So their other option is to get family and friends money. So when you're in a very early stage, then the only people who are going to invest in you are the ones who know you and trust you. And so they're going to be the people with whom you have some sort of a personal connection. After you've built something, you have some sort of an idea of what it is that you're doing and some sort of an idea how you're going to make money from it, then you can try to raise money from outside investors. And then there are different stages of investors in terms of how big their investments are and also at which stage of companies they invest. The investors that invest at companies at very early stage are called angel investors. And what they give you is they give you seed money. It's like almost like a company is like a plant, supposedly going to grow, and they're going to be like the sun shining up on the company with their wisdom and gold.
That's great.
And so angels will typically, the investment from angel investors varies from, it can be as low as $25K, and it can be as high as over $1 million. And then they will take up to 20% of the company if the founders are smart. If they're giving more, they're probably not getting a good deal. I mean, it depends on what the company is, but generally speaking, they should not be giving out more than 20% of their company at the first fundraising because there will be others. And the way how you know how much you should raise money the first time is you try to determine milestones in your company development. And you only raise money from you to reach from one milestone to the next, so that the next milestone you can get a higher valuation and you don't need to give up as much of your company to get the money. Because at that point, there will be more certainty that you're going to execute your plan. There will be more information about demand for your product, the completion date for your product. The team will be complete. There will be many questions that are resolved rather than at the point when the company is just starting in there are only 2 or 3 or maybe 4 people involved, and they definitely don't have all the expertise needed at that stage to make a company, a complete business.
My audience is going, yes, we want to call her. You don't want calls. You want emails? You want calls? How do you want people to contact you?
So the Startup Station Meetup is on the Meetup site. So this is a very affordable way to learn finance. These are 3-hour MBA level classes for people, and I assume no prior finance knowledge. And in the end of each class, everybody gets a PowerPoint so they can go home and review all the material that is presented, and also get an Excel spreadsheet where they can look at the formulas of how all the calculations have been obtained. If somebody wants custom help, then I can be reached at victoria@thestartupstation.com. And that information is also on my Meetup. And the website of my company is www.thestartupstation.com as well.
Okay, we'll have to put it out there. Otherwise, how are they going to cut? They're going to email me, and I'm going to say I should have asked that question. No.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I offer a 45-minute complimentary consultations. So anybody who's got any questions about their business, provided that it's within the area of my expertise, which focuses on business strategy, which is, how do you think about, basically how do you come up with your business plan, and the financial strategy, which is how do you evaluate the financial feasibility of your business plan. I can answer it pretty much about any industry. So at this point, I have probably, I've taught more than 500 businesses over the past 2 years, and I've had over 50 companies that I've helped with various aspects of their lunch. In the past 5 years.
Okay, so we need to put you in touch with Access VR. Have you been in touch with Access VR?
No, what is that?
That's Adult Continuing Education Services.
Yes, absolutely.
VR. You need to become a vendor with them because they have an entrepreneurial aspect too. It's not only train people with disabilities to go to work, but also to have their own business.
Absolutely.
To set up their own business. So when they give you that information, you should really, because that's the one problem that we had with our entrepreneurs is we would give them a blank business plan and give them a blank financial plan. I don't know Excel.
But it's not even about knowing Excel. I think it's the frameworks and the approach of how to start thinking about your business and what the questions you need to be asking and what information you need to get that people don't know, because if your expertise is to run this wonderful show or to run to work for the state and the government, then of course how would you know these things?
Exactly.
And then when you're creating a company, if it's not possible to have to know everything. And I think the best thing that entrepreneurs can do is to realize what they know and what they don't know and to ask for help. So they don't always have to pay for help. The one thing that I recommend that entrepreneurs do is to create a board of advisors. So a board of advisors is different from a board of directors. A board of directors is something that's created from management and also investors, and they have different responsibilities. A board of advisors are people who are industry insiders, somebody who has the expertise that the founders don't, and can advise them and can lend their connections and can lend their credibility to the venture for a little piece of equity, typically anywhere from 0.25 to 1% that's vested over 2 years. And that is very cheap to get somebody's time and all the information that you otherwise would have to pay a lot of money for, and especially to get access to their connections and network. That is, took them years and years and decades of working in the industry to construct. And so these people can help with introductions, they can help with customer introductions, investor introductions, hiring, and general strategic advice. So I think that as an entrepreneur, what people don't tell you is that you feel very isolated because you're working in this bubble, you think that you're, obviously a lot of them are passionate, which is a good thing, they're passionate about their product, but sometimes passion can also blind you. And then it makes you think that you are invincible and that you're always right and that you know everything. And that is not true, because it is to err is in the human nature. And so the sooner you realize that you're not the smartest person in the room, the more successful your business is going to be. In fact, I recommend to always try to hire people that are smarter than you, because that's how a business can become truly successful. And the one company that I personally think has done it really well is Google, because they just... it's a very big company, but the way how they hire people and how they really take care of their employees and how they really keep the intelligence level of all of their employees high is truly remarkable.
Well, where do they find those people?
Oh, they don't have trouble. All the best programmers in the world want to work for Google. Yeah, it's almost impossible to get a job there now. Only if you get acquired by Google, then you kind of have a red carpet rolled out for you.
So you say you teach the classes in Manhattan, but
Right.
is that different locations in Manhattan, or it's a building?
It's a different locations. I have multiple sponsors. One of my sponsors is Spark Labs. So I'm teaching a class there on financing, on startup financing. Spark Labs, it's a co-working space, and so they have a lot of early stage startups that work together. They have multiple locations in the city. The one where I'm teaching is in Bryant Park. That is their main location. My other sponsor is a bank called BHI USA. It's a U.S. arm on an Israeli bank, Bank Hapoalim, that has extensive practice of working with startups. Because obviously in Israel, there are a lot of startups that are emerging. This is the capital almost of the startup world. So they opened up their branch here, and they provide a lot of services to startups that I find really helpful. So for example, they do relationship management. If you're a client of the bank, they're going to do venture capital introductions for you. Or if they can introduce you to big corporate clients that are clients of the bank, they're going to introduce you to any service providers, lawyers, accountants, bookkeepers, anybody who you need to set up operations of your business, because they've got a big list of vetted service providers that they have worked with and that they know are good. And the person who runs the startup division is now opening up a pitch clinic, which is where you can create, in order to apply for outside investment, you need to come up not only with the financial model, but also with your story, right? That story is called a pitch deck, right? This is an investor presentation where you tell investors a story, why they should invest in you, as opposed to 100 other startups that are trying to get their attention. So a lot of people who don't have any business experience don't know how to tell that story well. And so she is the person who's been in the industry for so long and also is working with startups on a continuous basis, is providing a free service where she gives entrepreneurs comments on content. She's not going to help with the design. She's not a graphic designer. That's something that somebody else can do. But at least she's going to tell anybody who comes to the clinic of what they need to, what gaps there are in the presentation, how they should word something, what should be emphasized, what should not be emphasized, etc., which is extremely valuable as she's seen so many presentations on, day to day.
Wow, this is a lot of work.
She's very busy. And then I have, multiple other spaces from various lawyers and accountants that vary.
Okay, so you get to move around a lot.
They're usually either near Fulton Street or they're usually around Grand Central. So it's not, I try to keep it central so that it's convenient for people to get to no matter where they're coming from. And what's interesting is that actually my courses have been attended not only by entrepreneurs, but also by accountants who want to learn finance and they don't want to go to NYU or Columbia. It's much cheaper to come to my classes right now, at least, before you get a formal MBA. And then lawyers who get asked by their clients, is this a good deal? Or should I go with this vehicle versus another vehicle? So they want to learn a little bit of finance. Even investment bankers come to me because they don't know how to value companies that are called pre-revenue, right? Pre-revenue are those that don't generate revenue yet, and the way that you value them is not the same as how you value publicly traded companies, where there is a lot of history, and all you have to do is to really look at the trends and figure out if certain trends are going to continue or not. When you have a pre-revenue startup, or you're starting with a blank slate, you really have to think about your strategy and how you're going to execute it, which is why a process of building a financial model is so important, because it helps you refine what you're trying to do and to create concrete goals that you're planning to achieve at this point, and outline a way of how you're going to achieve them. And so I think another big misunderstanding in the space is why you need a financial model. You don't need it because you know the future, right? People ask me, how can I guess the future? How do I know if I'm going to make $1 million or $2 million or $5 million? And the answer is you don't know. The objective is not to guess the future. The objective is to create your strategy and to express that strategy in a mathematical way and to evaluate whether it produces a positive cash flow for you or not. And so in this process, it allows you to think through the execution strategy to as much detail as possible. It makes you more prepared when you go to market. It helps you answer, how much money you expect to make at what point, which people you need to hire, how much you're going to pay them, when they're going to come on board, what are the operational costs of running your business, how much money you need to get your business to profitability, at which point do you expect to break even. And of course, a model is not a static thing. So as you get more information, and as you move forward into the future, the information changes and you update it. And so at any point, the model only reflects what you know at this point, and this is your plan for the future, given all of the information that's available to you at that moment in time.
Have groups called you to come and...
I have whole companies attend my workshops where they send their entire junior staff to my workshops as well. It
just sounds like something that they would reach out to you as the expert, and that's great. You must be having a ball.
Oh, I love teaching, and I always thought that I would need a PhD to get that. And then I started teaching, I started creating my own content, and suddenly my workshops grew from 5 people to 10 people to 20 people to 40 people, and now it's basically a matter of, how big a space I can get. So Madison Square Garden eventually is next. I'm going to just teach, one big course on financial modeling once a year.
Do Citi
Bon Jovi
Field.
will be before,
Do Citi Field.
Rolling Stones after.
Okay. Well, I've seen Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, so it's so great to have you here so that people can see that there's people that we can ask for help. We just have to be able to know where they are, and then to take the next step and say, well, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? What do you think I should do? And a lot of people have difficulty accepting their limitations.
Absolutely. And then there are some resources that are available to people who don't have a lot of financial resources. I think Small Business Administration has offices all around the city. And yes, you're not going to get in-depth advice, but you're going to get some beginning advice, and then you can take that advice and then get whatever other help you need. But it's going to allow you help save some money, and it's going to allow you to start moving in the through this process. But I highly recommend getting as much education as possible, just as a background, as a foundation, so that when you're starting to think about your business, you're not making some mistakes from the get-go. You have the right approach, and then you're trying to stay as objective as possible, even if it's your baby, because a business is like your baby, essentially.
I could see you being in the high schools, teaching those graduating seniors who are saying, I don't want to do this, I want to do it, but they have really no direction. And
yeah, whoever, if any high school would like to invite me, I would not say no to.
This is, no, providing the information is what's been missing. You're there, and you say you've been there for 5 years?
Well, yes. The school only existed for 2 years, and it became a finance school, I would say, in the last 1.5 years. As soon as I realized that people think they know strategy, even though they don't, but it's much easier to convince them that they don't know finance, because it's very simple. Either you know what an income statement is, or you don't know. So if you don't know, you come to learn. But when you start saying that, oh, I'm going to teach you strategy, then they say, oh, I think I know how to grow my business. They may have no idea, but they think they know, because they've been in the industry for many years. So that's a huge misconception. But then when we start talking about, I like to do a case study where I take, one of the people who come, I take their company at random, and we try to model that company for 1 hour in front of everybody. And we're never able to get far because they can't answer any of the questions. And the reason why they can't answer is because they don't know their strategy. They haven't thought through how they're going to come to market. Their business plan hasn't been fleshed out enough to put it into any form of a forecast. And so it becomes extremely clear, and that by itself is a learning process for everybody, because they start to understand what they need to do, the depth of thinking and depth of research they need to perform in order to get to the place that they need to get to. I think this stuff is extremely valuable, and I think that it's not only, like I mentioned, not only startups that don't have this expertise, but small businesses, mid-sized businesses. Mid-sized businesses probably do, even though some they don't, but most of them, if you have a finance function, probably you have that expertise. But a lot of small businesses come to their bookkeeper and like, how come I can make payroll this month? I thought that I made money, via my income statement, and what they don't understand is that income statement is not the same thing as how much money you have in a cash account, because income statement has a lot of things in there that are non-cash, and so the number that you get in the bottom is not really your bottom line. It's like you should look at the cash flow statement. The cash flow statement, that really says how much money is moving around. And so things like that seem basic, but because people don't have that education, and also because they're so busy running their businesses, that they don't take a step back to evaluate how their business and do it. They're not tracking business drivers that drive their business, so they're not able to make decisions in time in order to continue making money if something is going well, or to reverse a negative trend and not end up in the red for multiple months. And sometimes they don't even realize that they're losing money because they're not tracking the right indicator.
And you're teaching them how to do that.
Right, yes.
And I'm going to appreciate you. Yes, I am.
If you've got a business idea, Hilda, I will be happy to help you.
I do. Everybody knows about. No, I do bowling.
Yes.
And we're trying to open up a bowling academy.
Mm-hmm.
Because bowling is going to be an Olympic sport.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it is. I'm a certified Olympic bowling coach.
Wow.
So we want the inner city youth to have an opportunity to compete as well. So
right.
If all the bowling centers in the city are closing down, then I'd like to have an academy, because it's not going to be so much about making a whole lot of money though, but it's about establishing a facility for the youth.
Right.
Different kind of business.
Right. Well, for that type of business, you can probably raise money from foundations and grants, because it has a nonprofit component, and people who are passionate about the social component of your idea may be willing to support it. Or people, or also you may raise money from people who are trying to sell to, anybody who makes bowling equipment or bowling, clothing. They may want to become sponsors, and then give you some money to get brand awareness for whatever they're doing. So there could be two avenues where, one is advertising and one is nonprofit.
So that's what I'm trying to do, though. And ours is intergenerational, because, well, our youngest has been 3.5, and our oldest is 81.
Wow,
so,
that's amazing.
Teaching.
Can the 81-year-olds, they can play bowling still?
I just took an 81-year-old to a tournament Sunday.
Wow. I love bowling.
So
My son loves bowling too.
we have a 99.99999 success rate as far as all of our kids graduate from high school except one. And
That's
I've been
great.
coaching since 1988 with the
Wow.
kids, and only one got arrested
Yeah.
since 1988 because we don't play that. And we don't preach at them, we teach them.
Right.
So
I think it's very important.
And bowlers are very positive people,
Right.
and everybody, all the different careers are right there in the bowling center. So our kids get to ask about different jobs and different occupations. So it's
They get
exposing
exposure.
them. So it's a sneaky way, but it works because you know that you're not stuck in doing just this. You have choices, and see they're all doing it. So that's my. Yes, I did a different approach again. I'm always going to do that. That's what I want to do. That's why I'm doing the TV show, so that I can get awareness out there that, no, our kids don't have to keep going to the prisons, and they don't
No.
have to keep hurting themselves on the street. And we even use anger management in the bowling center. You mad at me? Knock down pins, you get scholarship. Because bowling offers more scholarships than all the other sports combined.
And I actually read a book by Malcolm Caldwell called The Tipping Point, and he talks about how there's been a lot of studies done on the influence by peers in an environment versus influence by parents, and the influence by peers in the environment is a lot more important.
Exactly.
And so by creating these bowling centers, I think you can really make an impact and give those kids a chance.
I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing
you.
with us.
Thank you so much.
And
It's been a pleasure.
I only went over a little bit. To my audience, I want to say, I want to thank you again for choosing In My Shoes. I'm Hilda Kathy Broady, your host, and we're going to continue to bring you the information that nobody else is, because we're going to share, because what we're doing, taking a different approach to service in the world. Hi again. Thank you for choosing In My Shoes. I'm Hilda Kathy Broady, your host. Remember, we at In My Shoes are taking a different approach to service in the world. And today, yes, I keep bringing you my relatives, because when people are wonderful, they're just wonderful, and I'm trying to share everything with everybody. So I have my niece, Emily Varani, with me today, and she's an author. She's a mom. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, let me give you your shoe.
Yes.
It could be in my shoes. Okay,
Absolutely.
now, so, talk to me, kid.
So I wrote this book. It took me about 2 weeks to write.
What?
Yeah. My son, he's 5.5. He was driving me up a wall. We recently moved into our own apartment. It was just me and the kids, and he was having a difficult time transitioning into that, and he was just crying so much, and he was just getting me frustrated. And I tried everything. I tried yelling at him, putting him in corners, consoling him, nurturing him, anything I could think about, and nothing was working. And one day I got so upset and frustrated, I yelled at him, and I was like, once upon a time there was a boy who wouldn't stop crying. And I just kept building on the story, and I'm like, thanks, Evan, you flooded the house. Now we got to build a boat. Now you flooded the boat, thanks for that. And we just kind of kept adding to the story. And of course I had to find an end to it. So I told him there was a wizard, and this wizard is basically telling him that if he does everything that he's supposed to do, he's destined to be the next wizard. He's destined for greatness. And the only way that he can do that is if he listens and he eats his food, take your naps, do what you're supposed to do, because you're destined for greatness. Just do the little things. And that story, to this day, as long as he's crying, I'll start the story from the beginning, and I'll say it to him over and over again. As soon as the wizard whispers something in his ear, and immediately the boy stops crying. Immediately he'll stop crying. Every time now. It's the only thing that works.
Wait a minute, how old is he?
He's 5.5.
Okay, 5.5.
He missed his terrible twos, and I'm feeling it now.
Okay.
So this is the book. Any notifications or any update that you want on it, you can follow me on Instagram at The Boy and the Wizard. All of the information is there, as well as on Facebook as well.
On Instagram?
Instagram, yes.
Wait a minute, what do you do on Instagram?
Instagram, you post certain things. So my last interview, when I went to Chicago for my first interview, I posted the information on there. When I was doing my audio version, I have an audio version, softcover, hardcover, and an ebook for it. So any information that I have, I post everything on there, and it allows you to put a website. So you can put the link in there for people to purchase the book on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, it's on Google+, things like that.
Have you gotten any feedback from
People who
people have
purchased it.
purchased the book?
Yes, I have. I actually did a storytelling at my son's school. They are learning about like authors and illustrators and stuff like that. So I got personal feedback from the little kids who read the book. That was super interesting. They were very interactive. They wanted to understand why he was crying so much. Dun, dun, dun. They would make like these funny
Really?
sounds throughout
Little
the
kids?
they were like, oh my goodness. So that was really cool. From parents, I found that moms really were having the same struggle that I was with their children. Their boys just won't stop crying, or their children are just like, they can't figure out how to get them to do what they need to do, or it's been very difficult for them. So having something that they feel they can reach their children with has been very, very helpful and beneficial for them as well.
Excellent.
Yes. All right. So the audiobook, I also have it's signed up with a marketing program. So it's been to book fairs in Beijing, Guadalajara, and so far Germany.
Who's translating it?
They actually give it to them in English.
Really?
Yes, they give it to them in English.
Well, it's
and
illustrated, but still.
They give it to them in English. And it's so this way the publishers in that country, if they want it to be translated, then they reach back out to me and we work forward from there.
Oh, okay.
So at the present moment, it's not in another language, but that's the goal.
Is it in Pakistan too?
It actually might. It's supposed to go to India, if I'm not mistaken, so it might reach to Pakistan, which is really, really
How
cool.
does your dad feel about this?
Oh, my goodness. When I called my dad and I told him that I published a book, I mean, in my dad, Jesus, he, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe you. So he had to go on there. Oh, man, he told the whole family. I was getting a million phone calls from all my aunts. Like, I can't believe it. They were all so proud. And so that was, like, really, really cool. And because I have my picture on the back of the book, he's able to, like, post it in his store. And he's like, this is my daughter. So it was really, really cool. And because it has his last name, I'm his first kid, as well as he has no boys. So I'm the closest, I guess you could say, to carry on his name. So now that's something that I have, even if I pass, his name will still carry on.
Varani will go.
Varani will keep it going. So he's really, really happy about that as well.
So you're going to be writing another book?
I actually have 2 additional books. The first one is actually in illustration phase at the moment, and that one is for my daughter. I found that a lot of little girls, especially little girls of color, they have a lot of insecurities, and it's very difficult to try to get them to understand how wonderfully and beautiful they are and to accept them in their own skin. Like, you don't need to walk around with pin straight hair and bleach your skin, or you don't have to wear the tight clothes. You don't have to do any of that. And my daughter is becoming a little fashionista.
She's 7?
She's 8 now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and she wants to wear the skinny jeans and the nice tops, and she likes these shoes, and she just found out about Jordans, and I'm like, you're 8, so
Jordans?
Yeah.
Oh, she wants to wear the names of everybody.
She won't. She just fine. She go little polo. She'll be just fine. But
That's even a name. Remember I used to say, if you're not wearing a different approach?
That's right.
So I meant that. What have they done for you?
Nothing.
And a different approach was there for you. So
Yes.
therefore, you could display a different approach. And that's the only name I have on my stuff.
I'm telling you, it was a little difficult. So I wrote a book basically just to encourage her with her self-esteem and to help her, fight her inner bully. That inner part where you want to beat yourself up and stuff like that.
But I think that's society, though, because it's not unique to any age group, because we're subjected to feeling not great about ourselves no matter what. Because I didn't feel good when I was small. I didn't feel good when I was fat. I didn't feel good when I thought I was too short. Somebody said I was too tall. You never know. I thought I was real black.
Right.
And next to my sisters, I was darker.
Right.
Okay, but I wasn't. But I went with a guy who kept saying, why do you keep saying that? And I kept saying, because I am. And he said, but I'm darker than you, and you running around acting like you walk into a black wall and nobody can see you.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's how society made us feel at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling good that our younger people, because you are younger people, are actually noticing that the word, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be the Bible all the time.
It doesn't.
But the power of words, and they can go back to it every time. They can go back to it every time. Every time somebody, they can,
Yes.
something to draw on, to feel with.
Yes, and that's literally, especially what I realized around my kids. That they're in a Bronx community charter school, and they're very visual. They need to see it, touch it, feel it. They need to understand it. And so, especially for him, he has something that he can reference. And now he knows that he's a big boy. He can't do certain things.
Okay.
And I want my daughter to feel that same thing. I want her to know, yes, you have your own book dedicated to you, and it's here for your encouragement. There's always motivational books for adults, and there's always different ways to inspire them. And I want to make sure that we're not missing the mark when it comes to the children as well. Because if they're the next generation, how are we motivating them? How are we inspiring them?
You have to get to be an adult.
Right.
So what are you doing in the first 18 years?
Yeah. So especially since they're sponges right now, it's like I want to get that into them and get them to feel confident and inspired now.
So what does your mother say about this?
She's excited. She's proud. I realized that once I actually went forward with publishing, a lot of people came out and wanted to start writing books and kind of like they felt more inspired to do certain things. So I know she was interested in writing a book. She's in the works with that for herself. She's very, very proud.
So how are you publishing it? You publishing it through...
It's more like a self-publishing with assistance. It's a company called Ex Libris.
Okay, a couple of people have been on that have gone through Ex Libris.
Yes, Ex
okay.
Libris, yep. So they assist you with the marketing portion of it. Of course, you have to self-market as well, but they assist with certain portions like that and help you get the copyright and the ISBN number and, getting it actually produced and so on and so forth.
How long did it take?
I think that was the worst part. It took 6 months or so to get
Really?
everything settled. The two illustrators that I have, Fred Nunez and Antonio Lozano, one made the characters, one made the backgrounds, and I put everything together myself, making sure that the illustrations came across correctly and repositioning everything and moving the words and stuff like that was like the biggest thing for me.
Oh, so you're a graphic artist as well?
I've done graphic design. I used to own my own event company. And so I used to create the invitations and design the centerpieces and put together that kind of stuff. So I just used that knowledge to kind of gear it more towards what I wanted to do.
Okay, so you're opening up your own company now?
No, I stopped the event planning for a little bit, but I'll stick to writing. I feel like writing is more of a passion than it is. Like, I'm good at event planning, but my passion is in writing.
Okay, you have to go with your passion so that you know that, because if you go with your passion, then it's a labor of love.
It is. It made me feel good. So, yeah, that's what I want to be. I'm just going to stick to being an actual writer.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years, my goal is to have my second book published, the third one in its final stages. I want to have at least about 3 launch parties by then.
Excuse me, what's a launch party?
A launch party is when you kind of broadcast what you've done. So in this case, I would be having an event saying that, that I published a book. This is what it is. I'm working on making a coloring book for the kids. It's like a grab gift to take with them for coming.
Okay.
You do like a book signing inside of there. You do a lot of marketing as far as that's concerned, market your next book. And some lunch parties, they'll bring in a lot of other small companies. So if they have like a clothing line, you would bring that into it. If you have people who just started rapping or a small group, something like that, you can have them do live performances. And
where would this take place, though?
more than likely in the Bronx, seeing as I'm very much a Bronx cat, born and raised, so probably in the Bronx. I have like a few locations that I'm thinking of. I'm considering the city since most of my people are Queens, Brooklyn, they're all over the place, and the heart of the town is going to be in Manhattan anyway. There's a few places there too that I've considered.
Because Manhattan is difficult.
I found a nice little rec center that I can use. So something like that where I'm just kind of bringing everyone together to, for a greater good and just speaking about why I wrote the book and something similar to what I'm doing here.
So do the schools get in touch with you to say, come and talk to our kids? Or
I have one school, actually with Uncle Billy. I was supposed to be reaching back out to him. He said he wanted to get into a school down there. And I have my children's school. who are very much into it and working with them for their book fairs and stuff like that.
Strangers are more helpful. For
They
some
are.
reason, they have been a lot more supportive.
They normally are.
I think sometimes their family, they don't want you to fail, so they don't want you to start.
Right.
That's because I always had, when I was younger, it was, well, why are you trying to do that? Even when I ran for mayor, they were like, well, why don't you run for something smaller than that, like city council or something? I said, because they don't fix the city.
They don't.
So why am I going to start there when I know that they have no power? I want to go up there and fix this.
Right.
But our families tend to want us to take it easy.
Yeah, take the
slide. And I'm too old for sliding. And I see that you have gotten somebody to rub off on you.
Just a little bit, just a little bit. Yes,
No.
very much so. I feel like I took a piece of all of you. I honestly have. Like, I have the same strength. I have the, no, this is what's going to happen. I have that in me. I see the differences with all of you.
Okay. So, no, because, I mean, sometimes we're a little different, odd.
And nothing wrong with that.
No, because we are also very loving people.
We are.
You know, I have no problem bragging about that. I have no problem bragging about my family. Because as large as we are and as scattered as we are, I think that if things really came to...
Yep, if it came to it, it's on. That's very much true.
So,
I feel like there's a lot of talent within all of our family. I feel like the amount of talent is kind of almost ridiculous. Like, if you tell us to do something, it's going to get done.
somebody gonna do it.
Somebody gonna do it.
Because we have musicians,
we
have
do.
artists, we have photographers, we have the whole
Everything.
gamut. I mean, I have a nephew in Florida who said he wanted to be a welder. He was on the show. He said, I want to be a welder, Nate.
Oh.
So I was like, well, you have an uncle who's a welder. Why haven't you called him to say, Uncle Vaughn, talk to me about this. I'd like to find out, get some information about it. And I'm saying we have so many different talents in our family, and our younger children are not reaching out to everybody to get the information. I mean, his uncle said, well, he should go to the library. And I said, no, I want him to know what's really happening in the welding field.
Right.
Not what the books say, because there's a difference.
That's completely different.
Because there's ins and outs to the field that we don't know.
Right.
Travis is going to be an engineer. So we have people aspiring to greatness. Whatever he wants to do, he's going to do it. So he's applying for information about it now and getting the information. I think he got a scholarship or something like that toward
That's
engineering
amazing.
early, because we tend to not tell our young people, you can apply early. You can apply for scholarships early. You know, in high school, they have scholarships for high school students.
That's amazing.
And I kept saying, but what would they need a scholarship for in high school if the high schools are free? But they had for instruments for the musicians.
Wow.
They had for athletic gear for the athletes. And I was going, wow, who would have thought that?
I don't know. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, scholarshipsforstudents.com. And they have scholarships for, if you can go on, I'm going to send you the link. You can go on moms. They go by your religion. They have scholarships for fat people. They have scholarships for short people.
Wow.
I'm telling you, you think about it, there's a scholarship for it.
Wow.
So that's why I want our young people to know, you're only 20 who?
I'm 28.
Only 28? and you got your head screwed on correctly. And our young people need to know that it's okay to go left, right, long as you know the focus is going to be there, because we never go the straight path anyway.
No, we don't.
We
I know I
deviate.
didn't want to. You know, it's like they kind of try to screw in your head. You have to go to this school. You have to go to this school. When you're finished with this, you have to go to college. And then when you're finished with college, you're going to work an internship. And then you're going to get a job in this career. And then you're going to do this 9 to 5. And then you're going to, and it was like, I'm looking at this path and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I tried. I tried it for a year. I didn't want it. I really wanted to be a mom.
Okay.
I really did. And I know it's not something that's common, you know. They're like, you're so young. I'm like, okay, it's still my choice. And I'm still good. And my kids are happy and I'm good, you know. And it was like, once I had them, I felt like my kids gave me that drive to push forward to what I actually wanted to do and kind of like hone in and see what I felt like was the best decision for them as well as myself. So it's good to know that there's ways that I can help them, you know, and kind of help them.
Because you're
grow.
a mom,
Yeah.
helping your children,
Yeah.
living for your children, which mothers do.
Yeah, sometimes we become selfish, just a little
No,
bit.
that's not selfish though. That's if you don't take a time out for me every now and then. I'm not saying all the time, but if you don't do it every
just
now and then,
sometimes.
gonna have some problems later on.
I sure would. It's good to know though, so this way I can at least let them know. My daughter wants to she wants to do gymnastics.
Do they have a gymnastics program in her school or
Not in her school.
in the
She
neighborhood or?
Not in the neighborhood. It's a little bit of a distance, but I can. That's my goal to get.
Wait a
her
minute,
into
is there something in the
gymnastics.
Bronx? Do we
Yes.
have something? We have something in the Bronx at
We
least.
do.
Okay, that's
It's something in the
kinda
Bronx,
scary.
just
Okay.
not.
I was going to say,
something
oh,
in the Bronx,
going to
just-
Westchester?
Yeah, no. I'm not taking her to Westchester. There's something in the Bronx. It's just trying to get her there with my current schedule. So
Oh,
get her to do that, and I'm putting my son into football.
football. You hear all the stuff that's happening in football
I have.
with the brain damage and the body damage and all that, and
If he tackles me again,
let him bowl.
I could let him bowl.
Let him bowl. Let him throw things at the pins and get his anger out. Let
He
him
wants to do
bowl.
soccer.
Huh? Let him bowl. I'm telling you, through rain or snow or gloom of night, it doesn't rain in the bowling alley. It doesn't
That's
snow in the
true.
bowling center. Nobody jumps on your child in the bowling center.
That's true.
Okay, I had a nephew, in Lamar Bowl. He went to play football.
He
He went to play football for a minute, and then I think a 250-pound somebody jumped on him, tackled him. And he came back to the bowl now and he said, nobody jumps on me here. I don't want to do that no more.
Oh man.
So I was like, I hear you, baby. I hear you, baby. I don't understand about football either. I used to watch it. I always wanted him to be a ref.
Oh.
Because refs have longevity.
They do.
You know-
They'll be just fine.
Right.
Yeah.
But if he wants to do football, then you need to get in touch with Quantica
Okay.
because her son is doing football as well. And he's actually quite good at it. And they have a pretty diverse football program. And it's in the Bronx as well. Everybody we talk about is basically in the Bronx for now.
Pretty much.
Okay, but he's doing Jamil. He bowled for a minute, but he wanted to run. And there's no running in bowling.
That's very true. My son runs everywhere.
Really?
Yes.
That's a boy thing though.
It must be.
That's a boy thing.
Like I have to, when we walk to school, I have to let him have his head start. Me and my daughter will start walking, and then I stop. We'll get closer, go. And he has to run. He can't just walk with us. If he does, then his mouth is running 1,000,000 miles per hour. He has to run. Up hills too. He's running.
So you shared your child rearing.
Yeah. Oh, The Boy and the Wizard, A Cure for the Tears. It's illustrated by Fred Nunez and Antonio Lozano. My pen name is E. Levy versus Emily Varani.
And I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And to my audience, I want to say, I want to thank you for choosing In My Shoes. Yes, we're going to keep sharing all of my family if I have to, but all of the positive things that are in our community that we don't tend to see, that's kind of hidden in the background. And the news is not going to bring this to you because she didn't shoot anybody. She didn't stab anybody. She's not out on the street yelling at anybody. She's actually saying, I'm a mom. I see that there are some difficulties with my children, and I'm addressing those, and I'm sharing it with the world. So again, thank you for choosing In My Shoes. See you next week. Be well.